Man, Bill, I think I've figured it out. When I grow up, I'm gonna be able to talk as good as Josh Scott. Man, he was
Man, he is great communicator. Kind of came out in his story. One of the reasons why he is a great communicator, but that's the key word, Jared. Story, man. You know, compelling story and how that can make a difference. How you can build a lot of good stuff around that in a dental practice. So that it's worth a listen just to hear that.
Yeah, 100%. Easy to gloss over and be like, now I'm good. I don't need to tell my story. But listen to this episode and you'll figure out the real true power of storytelling and why that makes a difference, especially in your dental practice and connecting with patients. So you guys are going to enjoy the episode here with Josh Scott with Studio 88. Enjoy, guys.
Welcome to Dental Momentum, the podcast dedicated to lively discussions on business and financial strategies tailored for dental business owners. At Duckett Ladd, we're committed to transforming your business journey and supporting you at every stage. Join us as we delve into the keys to long-term practice success, from cutting-edge accounting and strategic tax planning to personalized business strategies. Together, let's propel your dental practice forward with unstoppable momentum.
All right, Josh, I can remember, I don't know how many years ago it was, but I was at a dental conference, right? And I was listening to, I think your sales director, Mike Sula. He was giving a presentation. And he started the presentation off like no other presentation. He just started off by telling a story. And I don't know, 5 minutes, 10 minutes into the story that he was still telling to start off this presentation, I looked around at the room, and you've been to a lot of dental conferences, right? And I'm not going to lie, probably when we're speaking on stage too, people are looking at their phones and moving around in their chair, when this is going to be over. I looked around, nobody was looking at their phones. Everybody was, I'm going to use the word sucked in. They were sucked into what Mike was telling, the story he was telling. And I still remember the story. What it was about his grandmother, and I can remember the pictures and everything. Mm-hmm. And then he went into his presentation, right, about the power of storytelling. And then at the end, I'm like, damn, this is legit. The power of storytelling is huge. And I really want to spend a lot of time talking about that. But I want to throw it to you right here at the beginning. Tell your story. Unpack your story of where you started from, where you are today. And then we really want to dive into the power of storytelling.
Yeah, well, gosh, I appreciate you guys having me here. That's such a great opening because it's actually a principle when it comes to speaking. If you want to connect with people, people actually don't care what you know. They don't care about the content of it. There's that saying, they don't care how much you know, they care how much you care, something like that. And so when I know that story that Mike was telling, and as we've kind of worked, and he's a great speaker, number one, but as we were kind of working to put that presentation together, I told him, I said, one of the things you always do is you start with a story because it's connection. Because before you have a chance to before you've earned the right to push content, you've got to connect with people. And it's a communication principle. It's a marketing principle. And that's kind of been the whole foundation of how we've even started is if you want to connect with patients, if you want to earn the trust to have them in your chair, it's got to start with connection first. So how do you do that? And it comes back to this whole thing of tell a story, put your values out there. Whether that's your story personally as a dentist, whether that's the story of your practice, whether it's the story of your team and that community, there's a lot of different storylines there. Sometimes I get pushed back of, Josh, I don't really have a great story, or I saw what you did with so-and-so, but man, I don't have that going on. And that's not the point. The point is, why are you even in that town? Why did you open that practice? What is it that you see that you're trying to build? There's a lot of different storylines there. But if you can share that and actually connect with people on a human level first, the chances of you winning their trust, of them coming into your practice, just skyrockets. But second, I think the thing we don't talk about a lot with marketing is not only are those patients coming into the practice, but they're coming in with much higher trust and a values alignment. And so when you're talking about case presentation, retention, word of mouth, marketing should increase all those things. Good marketing should increase all those things across the board.
Josh, let's kind of back up, because I think what we've realized is as we've gotten into the dental space, it is a small world, and there's a lot of awesome people in here, and they all do have a story of how they wound up in dentistry. So let's back up and let's hear yours, man. How did you wind up where you are today?
Yeah, man, I tell people I actually came out of high school and went straight to seminary, which most people don't know. But fell into dentistry by accident. So I like from ministry to dentistry. That's because that's usually how you get into this profession, right? That's the right path.
Very linear path.
It was, yeah, it was a pretty hard left turn to be honest, but kind of stepped out of that world after a decade. Landed in dentistry by accident with a practice management group. Really came on as their marketing director and was with them for about another decade. Helped grow that business and that practice. And along the way, I looked out and I think I realized I've always been on the marketing side. I've loved it. And it was doing that for them. And I was speaking and I was consulting with practices. But as I began to kind of get a handle on, there was actually a really big problem in dentistry when it came to marketing. And the problem was, and we still see it today, it's prolific. It's this kind of one size fits all approach to marketing. And back then, this was about 12 years ago, we've been around, I realized that was a problem really for two reasons. Number one, the digital marketing landscape is so complex and it changes so much. And the speed of it is now, it's just increasing, even with AI and everything right now. I mean, marketing is going to get redefined here in the next 5 years easy. So if you work with an agency that takes this one size fits all approach, maybe it fits and it works right then, but it can't evolve with that complex digital landscape. The other part of it is dentists want ideal patients. Like everybody I talk to is like, Josh, it's not enough just to drive in like 30 new patients that just come in and never come back again, or want to come in for the free whitening special or whatever it is. Like they want these ideal patients. They actually want to build a business that's respected in the community. And so those two things just obviously logically don't make sense. You take a one size fits all approach to marketing, but you want this specific ideal patient. And I'm like, those miss each other. And so you've really got to build something that's customizable, that, again, we go back to like telling your story. What is it that's unique about you? What are the patients you're trying to attract? Because I tell dentists as well, I'm like, I know you want ideal patients. Patients want ideal doctors and ideal practices. And so it's one-sided to just go, well, I just want ideal patients to come in here. I'm like, no, that's great. But you got to show the patients that you're the ideal practice. And if we can do that, all of a sudden now we've got connection, now we've got trust, and the new patients, the practice begins to grow almost predictably at that point.
Well, this makes perfect sense, the ministry to dentistry, man. You're a dynamic speaker. I can imagine being you behind the pulpit, man, bringing the message, man. So hit on, you said that, marketing is not a one-size-fits-all and, customizable. How do you guys dive in and kind of figure that out, like what they need? And also, how do you pull that story maybe out of that doctor? Because what you said there is probably what I would expect, is most doctors are like, man, I went to dental school, hopped out, hung around shingle, and now I got to practice. There's my story. How do you kind of pull that out from them?
Yeah, man, it's been a process of trying to figure this out. Some of it is when you start working with us, we've got some discovery tools on the front end that really kind of walk you through what's unique about you guys. Like, why did you even start this practice? There's even a little competitor research and values exercises and things like that, because we're really trying to like get into the mentality, like why this practice, why now. At the same time, I would be the first one to tell you that copy text is only going to go so far, man. And so from day one, our very first website we built with custom photography. So this was 12 years ago, 2014, where as our first client signed up, I remember sitting down with her, it was in the Cleveland area, and I just said, so it was like, yeah, let's build a website for you and get this digital marketing going. And I'm like, we got to find a photographer to come in and shoot some stuff, like real action, like what is it like inside the walls of this practice? And so I think that the visual part of it is probably 80% of the storytelling and the uniqueness. And that stuff you just can't replicate. I mean, you can go shoot 2 practices with the same photographer and you just get different images, you get different stories. And so I think between the video, video came on for us maybe a couple years into it later, but we've always kind of been ahead on that stuff. And back then I think it was a really hard sell, man. Custom photography, you're talking like I think back then we were maybe $3,000 to $4,000 for a photography session, and selling that to a dental practice was like a really big deal. Now it's kind of like everywhere in dentistry, and not that we originated it, but I also think our team, the way we've led our agency, is we're leaders in the space. We're thought leaders. We're on the edge of what's actually working, and so I think when you do that, you kind of raise the level overall. But now it's such a big
When
deal.
you look at the average dentist, I mean, do they have to have a certain mentality, Josh, to really embrace telling their story, getting out in front of a camera, investing in a great brand? I mean, does it take a certain kind, or do you find that some just aren't interested or want that, or it's not the right fit for them? Or do you think most dentists could do it, they just don't?
That's a good question, man. And I honestly think it like everybody can do this. And to be honest, we've got some avatars where it's maybe the 50-year-old male dentist who has had a great practice, probably one of the best practices in the community, has grown by word of mouth. They'll even tell me like, hey, I've never had to invest in marketing. And I'm like, that's great. Their website is, 14 years old and looks like, 3 generations ago. And so what I usually tell them is, it's not that you have to do this, make this major marketing investment, but what I will tell you is just upgrading your web experience, your digital experience. In that type of practice, we see like a 28 to 32% increase in new patients, in traffic through that website, new patient conversions into the practice, because what you don't realize is you're not connecting with people digitally, but you've got this word of mouth and this internal referral base, which is amazing. That's how you want to build a business. But the minute you bring your digital presence up into 2025, you see that jump. And so a lot of times I'm like, and that, usually it's the practice where he's like, Josh, I don't care about this, but my team tells me our website sucks. I'm like, it does.
An accountant can look at it and say
really
it sucks,
does.
right?
Yeah, and if you're just doing it to listen to your team, first off, I think they're embarrassed by it. They probably actually want to brag about the practice. They're proud of where they work, and they just want that digital footprint to represent that, which is like completely normal. But I think that's also post-COVID. I think that was one of the big shifts was like, what are websites going to do moving forward? And I know back then there was this kind of push from some people in the space where it was like, hey, everything's going to be reviews and it's going to go back to your Google business listing, and people aren't even going to care about websites anymore. They're just going to look on a map and all that and check reviews. Post-COVID, man, with the integration of online appointments, patient forms, now we've got chat, we've got AI agents getting integrated in that. The web experience is becoming more and more central. It is the digital representation of your practice. And so to just build a brick and mortar and all you care about is that is a flawed business plan. And it's going to leave new patients and ultimately hundreds of thousands of dollars of revenue on the table. You've got to think through that digital space as well and how you build that to actually represent.
Let's do a fun exercise here. At least it'll be fun for us, Josh. Put yourself in a typical consumer of dentistry and compare and contrast. They are looking for a new dentist. Somebody tells them and they go to site A, which is 2014.0 or whatever, and then they go to site B, Studio 88, 2025 version. I mean, what's the difference in experience? Like, why? Help me quantify for these people, like what that, or clarify what that difference is and how that changes their behaviors.
Yeah, it's immediately you communicate that you care. Like, that's it. I mean,
We call it the give a damn mentality. You actually give a damn. Yeah.
100%. And that happens in a split second. And most consumers don't even know that it's happening. It is something that is like subconscious, that is a judgment that's made. I think the way most consumers shop and behave is, especially if they're looking for a dentist, they go online, they search dentist, they're probably going to open 3 to 4 sites. I mean, I'm like a tab browser, so I would like right click, open it in a new tab. So I'm going down through Google, I'll click on 3 or 4. First off, if I have heard about any of those top 4 before, billboard, social media, friend referral, they immediately have an edge. So I think that exposure and consistency matters. But they're literally then, I'm going to look at all 3, 4 websites, and I'm begging for somebody to raise their hand and go, choose me, here's why. And so, and the thing is, you could open 4 of those sites, and 3 of them, they
They're
don't
exactly
give
the
a
same.
damn. But one of them is raising their hand like, hey, we actually care. We got photography last year. Here's our team. Everybody's smiling and they're happy. And you're like, okay. And what is happening is what consumers are trying to do is they're trying to put themselves into that situation. So they're trying to map their environment. So a lot of times, like, they want to know what the practice looks like. Is the team happy? Who's the doctor? Like, we're just trying to map, we're transposing ourselves into that environment to go, what can I expect when I walk into this? And if you can help them do that, then all of a sudden they're like, okay, you're just you're easing their nerves and and calming them down to build trust to go, okay, like, this is the right
Well, you
fit.
kind of hit on this, a couple minutes ago when you said, I saw a post the other day from, I don't know who posted it. I totally disagree with this statement, though. It was something like, I'll just paraphrase, websites aren't that important anymore. The Google My Businesses, the social media ads. And I'm thinking, and I'm an accountant, right? I'm just thinking common sense, like, well, okay, but where are those Google My Business pages driving you to? Where are these Facebook ads or social media ads driving you to? The website. And so the website is still extremely, extremely important, if not, in my opinion, would get more important, right?
Yeah. This is the fundamental flaw. I think this is in marketing everywhere, but specifically in dentistry, is we jump from one thing to the next. We act like what existed before has no relevance, and all that matters now is the TikTok ads moving forward. And the truth is, so that is that whole one size fits all approach. Because it doesn't mean it's outdated. It could be you go to an agency right now where they're like, oh, we can drive you 35 new patients a month through TikTok ads, and that's all you need, and who cares about the website? That is a one size fits all approach. That will work for some practices. There's a ton of practices that will not work for. So what we have is a complex marketing landscape of digital tools that we have to be able to figure out which ones can we leverage easily, low investment, which ones take some more investment, which ones are like, if you've got that 50-year-old male dentist, I'm like, I don't know that TikTok is the play. I'll be real honest. I think going back to an amazing web experience that shows this practice you've built for 25 years is probably the way that's the foundation of it. But to your point, it's the hub, and everything comes back. You go to make an appointment. Can you do that on social media? Maybe, but the experience, it's not quite there yet, but the experience on the site is better. The forms are going to come back to the site. It's just all the things come back.
Josh, I think I told you before we hopped on here, we're big believers there's 3 core, components of a business. That's sales and marketing, that's operations, and that's finance. We fit into finance, you fit into sales and marketing. So, you talk about the amazing web experience and what they're experiencing when they're looking at, the virtual office. Talk about how important it is that once you do the handoff to the office itself, that their operations are kind of aligned with what they're seeing on the virtual experience, because that could be a problem, right? If they have one experience on the website and then they get to the office and it's completely different.
Yeah. So real life example, guys. This was yesterday afternoon. One of our lead marketing strategists started a thread with me, and she was like, "Hey, it's this client who's been a long-term client, and within the last couple months, things were slowing down. So it's like, let's get you into an ad campaign. Let's start driving some new patients. You've got a great practice. Let's get some Google, clicks going." So he's been in it for 45 days. We get a message like, "Guys, this is not working. I really regret doing this. I had a bad ad campaign experience like 4 years ago. I was unsure about this. I'm $3,500 into it, and this is not working. I'm having another bad experience." So I'm like, okay, yeah, hold on. Like, let me go look. So I'm going through the analytics. So in the last 45 days, spent $3,500 on Google. It was just under 1,100 clicks to the website. 142 of those converted, meaning they called the practice. So I look at that and I'm like, $3,500 to drive 142 phone calls, interested people. Now, look, they're not all going to convert. You're going to have some insurance and some stuff through there. Even if you only converted 25 of those, the revenue from 20, I mean, if we said this practice is a little bit higher end, a little bit more cosmetic and aesthetics, I'm like, easily it's $1,500 a new patient coming in on average over the next like 18 months. So at 25, I mean, what your ROI, I mean, let's just say it's like 40 grand over the next year, and you spent 35. But so the problem is, I know what this is coming down to. We haven't got on the call with him yet, but it's coming down to operations. If you can have you can drive 142 calls to a practice in 45 days. If your operations cannot handle that or has problems, it's going to only magnify that. And so a lot of times, like what you said, marketing, if you've got some cracks, you got some problems, marketing is going to blow that up in a pretty big
dive
way.
in. How do you say that to them nicely? Or maybe you don't say that to them nicely. Like, are you having this phone call this afternoon or tomorrow? Like, how will you explain this to them?
Yeah, I think, and this is where we just have to be real honest with, hey, doctor, I know you've had this other bad experience. Let me just walk you through what the data is showing. And the thing is, we've got call recordings on all 142 of those. My team typically doesn't go through those. It's more like hey, you've had 142 calls. What I would encourage you to do, I know you don't want to do this, but this weekend, Saturday morning, take 2 or 3 hours and audit these calls, because as we look at the funnel, right, of, okay, we've got these ads out there. They drove 1,100 patients to the website, which is amazing because now you've got this exposure and his website looks great, which then converted 142, which is really good because they trust the website. But you're telling me you got no new patients from that. The bottleneck in that funnel is right there at the call. So you just try to talk to them objectively subjectively, bad experiences. You maybe were unsure about this. I get all that. Let's look at the data, because what you think is the problem may not be. And right now we have data showing there's a serious breakdown at the phone call level. So did we just are we driving people that are not even candidates for this, or is your team not able to convert on those calls? And dude, 90% of the time, I hate saying this, but 90% of the time, it's usually the
we
team.
tend to see that a lot too. I mean, that's something that does seem to get missed, is there is a handoff point where it switches to the other side of the stool, which is the ops. Let me kind of back up again, because I find this interesting. This is something we've observed with our firm. Josh, I want to get your take on it. As we have grown and put our content out into the world, and we've kind of put our story out into the world, we found that we kind of created this magnetic type of environment where we kind of attract the right kind of people, but we also kind of repel the wrong kind of people. And that has been something we've experienced. Do you tend to find that plays out in dentistry as well, or is it kind of bring us your huddled masses and we'll take whomever? I mean, is it kind of the same thing where you attract and repel through your branding, or do you just really want to attract?
No, I think you're on it there. First off, I love what you guys are doing. I was telling you before the show, I think, accountants that make an effort with marketing and do some things to put themselves out there, just
we
goes
don't have
such
a ministry
long way,
background,
'cause
so we're not
that's
as polished as you, man.
But the truth is, I think accounting, financial services, insurance, I think all that's actually really interesting. And sometimes the story around it isn't fair. And so when you can step out and create another story, I just think that's a really great play. But yeah, I think that's the point of good marketing is if you're looking for the agency to just drive 50 new patients a month to your practice, and it doesn't matter, right? Let's do the offers. Let's just get them in. They come in for the free whitening. They leave. They treat your team like crap. They don't want to pay. So there's all that. That's not us as an agency. We're very much of who's that ideal patient you're looking for. How can we connect with them? How do we connect with humans, with trust and values and all that stuff on the other side? And then build a long-term business from that, which I think there's plenty of patients like that in your community and surrounding area. I think most dentists, in the end, they want to build a really great practice. They want to be trusted in the community. They're a healthcare professional advisor. So they want to be seen like that. And you do that by just building a really great experience within the practice. So
I want to kind of tangent or pivot just a little bit here to, we were talking before we got on about, we work with group practices, you work with group practices. And also, maybe I'll just ask the question, you do some fractional CMO work, is that right? Or am I wrong on that statement? Yeah. So
Yeah,
my
no,
question
I
is
do.
maybe on the group practice side. So as you're adding new locations, and wanting to, let's say, scale and just get bigger, add new locations, that sort of thing, how does the marketing strategy change, if any? Like, do you have to do something different, think different, like branding? Like, how's that work?
Yeah, it's such a great question. The group space is really, really interesting. And I would say the first factor is it's really going to depend on your model. Whether you are all one brand, whether everybody's a separate brand, whether you're hybrid. So just that in and of itself gets complex. The easiest, most straightforward is when it's all one brand. And then in that case, what is the most important play is the branding and the consistency of, if you're at 9 locations across a metropolitan area, when people they see that icon, they see that brand, they need to recognize it. And the benefit is you've got 9 times as many touches, because whether they're driving for work or for dinner and they see the logos on those buildings, they're going to start to have more and more impressions of that. So you really got to think through that being whatever you create, brand logo, multiply that by the number of your locations, and that's the magnitude of it. And so you got to think through that. Hybrid and individual gets a little different. Usually what we do with our practices, like we've got one in the Wisconsin area, in the Madison, Wisconsin area, about 13 practices, all different names. But what we've tried to do is create consistent branding. So even though the names change, logos are consistent, layout is consistent. We have a little bit of a template for them built. So when he texts me and he says, hey, I'm acquiring this practice, we've got this checklist of like, these are the things we put in place. There's a patient referral program we put in place. There's a campaign to drive reviews right away when we get the practice. We know we got to change the Google business listing. We know we're doing a branding project. We know we're scheduling photography. So we almost just start working through the checklist. And so I think even as a group, one of the things you've got to establish with your agency, or whether it's in-house, is what's the system, what's the protocol for when we acquire a practice, or same thing when we start a new de novo, what's the protocol to how that marketing just moves through it. A lot of times we're just like, what's the need, throwing things at it, reacting to these purchases or these startups. And so I think establishing that is a huge
So when you
factor
see
there.
a fragmented, and that sounds bad, but when you see a group, like you said, that has individual branding, probably because they kept legacy brands or whatever for recognition, how hard is it to tell a story? I mean, can you tell stories? Can you pull that out each location, or do you still try to create a comprehensive story? Do you focus on the owner? I mean, how do you do that in that kind of environment?
Yeah, a lot of times with groups, what we're doing is one of the initial phases is the discovery with the group. Like, what is the values of the group? And then let's make that, so even though the image looks different, the name is different from practice to practice, if the values and the messaging can stay the same. So like every website is almost saying the exact same thing. That's usually what we try to key in on. But you're right. It's like legacy practices get a little tough, man, because the reason you don't change them is because they've got all this name recognition and goodwill in the community. And that what that doctor has built is stronger than changing the name of it. So you've got to kind of just balance those things. And, but the reason the group practice space exists is because you can take those practices because they haven't really done a lot of marketing. And like I said, all you have to do usually is build a great website, some photography, some video, some social media presence, a little bit of SEO, and you're going to get a 30% increase of traffic just in that practice. And then you combine that with lowering costs overall across that group. And that's why these it's so lucrative and so compelling as they come in. It's like you can get 40-50%, just increase over the next 2 to 3 years with these practices.
Talk about, so I mentioned the fractional CMO stuff. Talk about like what, you're going to have to talk about yourself here. Talk about what that service looks like, right? Like what that looks like, what size
Yeah.
group that makes sense for, like little technical stuff there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I've always kind of done. I initially I called it marketing consulting, and so I like right now I've got 8, 9 clients that I'm just on retainer with throughout the year, and these are long term. I mean, I've worked with them all for like 10 years at least. Bigger practices, I would say mostly single practices, multi doctor, but $3 to $8 million practices. I pretty much just oversee their marketing. We meet on a quarterly basis. We're just in a real good rhythm. It saves them from hiring somebody even on a part-time basis to get into that. The fractional work really began after COVID, where it's this group space where I come in. They're really in need. It's usually more mid-size. I would say 10 to 50 locations where they haven't quite built out their C-suite, or maybe they've got like a COO and a CFO, but they're not quite ready to make that jump to a CMO. So I work with a couple of those as well. Those ones I have to almost kind of limit my time, and I only have so many at a time. And usually it could be a year, it could be 2, but there's usually a time frame on it. I've got to have some type of marketing coordinator there to work with, because that relationship is very high level. You're talking strategy over a multitude of locations. You're talking budget. Most of the time I can go in and save 3 times my fee just in the waste of the marketing budget and just reallocating that. But I've got to have somebody that's like boots on the ground, because I'm not there, and so we execute the strategy. But yeah, so those are always fun to work with. It helps me learn the group space. I think the issue right now with groups, if I was being honest, is I feel like this is changing, but the last 5 to 8 years has been very much acquire, expand at all costs. I don't know that a lot of people are paying attention to the brand part of it. My theory, and we're starting to see this happen, is once this expansion begins to slow down and things start to equalize, and now you've got XYZ group at 100 locations and ABC group at 120, now it's going to start. Now we're looking like, well, how can we be competitive over this group? And now I think the brand is really going to come into play. Partly because it hasn't been valued, because these groups want to recap in the next 3 to 5 years with the next group up, so they actually don't care about making that investment. But as that begins to slow down too, and that timetable lengthens, I think you're going to see groups that actually care about building. They're not looking to sell out in the next 5, 10 years. They're looking to build something over
They're
the
just,
long term.
I call them EBITDA gobblers. They're basically just gobbling up EBITDA, right? Yeah. And they're not paying attention to same store sales. They're always looking at the next thing to add. But when that slows down, the brand comes with it, right? And that has to increase. That's a key component to increase the same store sales, because you got to increase what you have.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. I was at Dykema this year, which is probably one of the top group events, conferences in the country. But it was really interesting because the main focus this year was all same store sales. And for me, that feels so obvious. I'm like, well, if I have 10 locations, I want them all to be growing, right? And so how do we make all 10 locations continue to grow? But that just hasn't been the focus the last 10 years. It's just been, we gobble up EBITDA, package it, flip it, and go on to the next thing. So I think it's really interesting as interest rates have climbed. Money's not free anymore, which is part of it too. When money's free, like money. Who cares? Go get all the practices. So I think interest rates has actually been a huge factor in that for me is good, because now they're like, well, if we don't have free money and can't expand the way we want, now we've got to go get same store growth, which is a much healthier way for an organization to function.
To your point, as you're growing, and if you're having to look more on stabilizing and optimizing what you have, that's where it's important that they start looking at it as a business. They've been able to just kind of outsource and abdicate their marketing responsibility, their finance and all this stuff. But as you're growing, having someone who can chart that course, who knows what they're doing, and until it becomes a point where it can be an internal hire, that fractional relationship can be a game changer, I'm sure, just kind of stabilizing that leg of the stool. So as we kind of wrap this up, Josh, man, we've loved this conversation. Tell us, we're kind of towards the end of the year, 2025, looking into 2026, man. What are you excited about, man? What's going on that gets you really fired up?
Yeah, man, 2026 is going to be a milestone year. I'm already looking at it. There's so many things happening. Number one, my wife and I will celebrate 30 years
Congratulations.
being married next year. So really excited about that. My daughter will be turning sweet 16. My son will be turning 21. So those are all milestones. We got word that we're breaking ground on our new building here in 2 weeks, and it's a September 15th next year finish date. So we will be into our brand new world headquarters, 11,000 square feet, over right next to the new Intel $28 billion campus. So we've got a great piece of land out there, and we're gonna hit probably we will hit the first big major kind of financial milestone for Studio 88. I remember when I first started this, that number was completely like not even on the radar. And then I think about 4 years into it, I was like, oh, I think we can kind of hit this number. And it's a number where it's 0.4% of businesses ever hit this in the country. And so it kind of became our like big crazy goal. And the last couple of years, we've gotten a little bit more vocal about it with the team as we've led up to it. So that's going to be a big moment too. And to be honest, goals like that, man, they're weird because it's like there's a point where you look at it and you go, this is so crazy. If we could hit this, like everything would be solved, like life would be perfect, right? But then about a year ago, as we're starting to come up on it, I'm like, okay, it's 2 years away. Naturally reset your vision and the next goal. And so I'm like really telling myself, like, Josh, you need to do some things next year to really just take this in and enjoy it, because mentally I'm already on to the next thing. And it was also crazy is like, you're like, oh, that amount of money would solve anything. And then you get there and you're like, it doesn't at all. In fact, there's probably more problems. There's just more issues and more complexity at this point than there was. But so all that's kind of just,
That's
it's
the
interesting.
entrepreneur and the competitor in you, is that once you hit that milestone,
Yeah.
you like looked at, it's like lifting weights, right? You hit your one rep max on bench and you're like, oh man, I bet I can do 50 more pounds. Just give me another year. You're always looking ahead to the next. Can I ask the number? What number you're referring to? If you don't tell me, we can edit it out. But
No, we'll cross 10 million next
Yeah.
year, so 8
Good for you.
figures.
Congratulations.
that's big, man. Can you
Yeah, it's
imagine
like-
hitting that number when you were starting out?
No, I mean, mostly because a lot of this started as a hobby, and then it kind of became like boutique, and then it was like, man, if I could have a 6-figure income from this, that'd be amazing. And I think it's like 1% of businesses cross $1 million in revenue, but then it's like, it's like 0.4% after that actually hit, 10 million. And I don't know, I'm excited. I think we have a path to 20 in the next like 5 years, 3 to 5 years. So where our projections are at. So it's just fun, man. And honestly, it's really, our retention rate is super high. So that's one thing I always talk about with people is like, yeah, there's that revenue, but right now, like, we retain, we probably lose less than 5% of clients every year, which industry average is like 14 to 18%. So, just building something that I feel like is significant, that we're gonna get to the end of this and like be
There's
super
probably
proud of.
a podcast buried in here somewhere about how to chart your vision and probably the strategic steps it actually took to get there. It wasn't an overnight thing. I know you had to work very intentionally to get
Didn't
to
happen
that.
by accident either, right?
No, not at all. Not at all. That's fantastic.
No, and it really stretches your CEO skills at some point too, where you're like, there are things I don't know right now that I've got to learn.
I love it.
So
Josh, we could sit here and talk all day with you, man. Why don't you let viewers, how can they reach out to you? How can they get in touch with you guys?
yeah, Studio 88, go to s88.com, letter S, number 8, letter E, number 8.com. You can get in touch with us there. Instagram, I'm at Joshua Scott. So I'm still, in that account. So DM me, let me know that you saw this episode. I'd be happy to chat with you, answer questions, anything like that. We take a very consultative approach. So if you're just even out there wondering, what would you do different with my marketing? Man, set up a call. That's how our team functions. That's how we operate. It's very much if it was me, here's what I would do. And if that, connects with you and vibes with you, then maybe
And a
we
wine
work together.
connoisseur too, man. I watch your videos you put out. I'm wine illiterate, but I think I picked up some tips from you listening to your stuff. So that's awesome.
Thanks, man.
It is.
Dude, it's a connection piece, you know? It's like, if it's all marketing, it's just content. You're just shoving content. But I really do enjoy wine. I enjoy sneakers and CrossFit, and other people do too. And so it's just a way to connect with people in that. I mean, that digital space divides us, but if you can reach out and connect with somebody, it just makes all the difference.
Josh, we appreciate the conversation.